And the big one that we're going to touch on, which I highly recommend you get, New Jim Crow, which is by Michelle Alexander, goes over the mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. So, we're talking about this Cradle interrupting the Cradle to Grave pipeline. So what we're going to do is going to give you a little bit of information on how many people are locked up in the United States. Right now, this was as of 2018. As you can see, well, you can't see because it's real small, but it's 2.3 million people are incarcerated. And you have a breakdown of the ones that are in the state prisons, local jails, and federal prisons. As you can see, a lot of the majority is in the state prisons. Can anyone tell me what that building is?
Oh, yeah. That's downtown.
Mecklenburg County Jail downtown. That's right. Can anyone tell me what this building is?
Yep, I work there.
Okay. That's Spectre Drive. That's Jail North. That's where our youthful offenders are housed right now.
And where is that?
Spectre Drive.
Right?
And here's a picture of inside the jail. And now I have some numbers for you. And this is the Mecklenburg County jail population as of March the 20th.
Wow.
As you can see, the racial profile. Others 13. Hispanic and Latino is 158. Caucasians is 234. Last one, it's African Americans, 987. Also, here's a breakdown of the gender profile. As you can see, 91% are males and 9% females. Sorry. And this is an interesting one. Here's the age profile. And here we have, from 16 to 17, we have 49. From 18 to 24, 318. 25 to 34, 534. 35 to 44, 324. 45 to 54, 184. And over 55, we have 73. Let them marinate wait for a while. Lastly, the charge profile. As you can see, the pre-trial, we have felonies at 729, misdemeanors at 129. Probation violation we have 25. And sentence, we have 76 for felons and 152 for misdemeanors. So what does that say? Tells you that Mecklenburg County has a large population of African American males between the age of 25 and 34. Most of them are charged with a felony and awaiting trial. And the average stay is 156 days. Average stay is 156 days. That's 5 months. So what are we here for? We're here to stop the classroom to prison pipeline. If you can see, the young man is at a desk up top. But if you see the mirror on the bottom, the reflection, he's in the jail cell. And I leave you with that one, because that's very important. We're trying to interrupt that. And if you want more information on that particular, where that picture came from, see me, because there's a teaching tolerance by the Southern Poverty Law Center. They did a study in spring of 2013, and I can give you that information. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the moderator, Judge Yvonne Mims Evans. We give her a hand.
And good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let's around a little bit. I'd like to also welcome you on behalf of the Social Justice Ministry to Civics 101. I hope some of you are repeaters from last year, but I also hope that we have some new attendees and that our numbers will fill up as this program progresses, both today and in the weeks to come. As Terrence has pointed out to you some of the local statistics, those are the concerns that we have. How do we reduce those numbers? We're all concerned about what the police are doing, what's happening in the courtrooms, but we also need to be concerned about what's happening in our homes, in our communities, and in our schools. Have you ever spent time in an elementary school classroom and observed some of the children? If you have, raise your hand. Have you noticed one or two, usually little boys, but not always, who are just a little more active, assertive, or even aggressive than the other children? If so, raise your hands. Have you noticed the teachers spending extra time trying to redirect these children? If you have, you've probably said to yourself, in 10 or 15 years, I bet that child is going to be in jail or at least in a courtroom. And sometimes you would be correct. Our premise is that interrupting the prison to pipeline begins much earlier than when a person is first accused of committing an offense. To that end, we bring to you today these fine panelists who will have 5 minutes to tell you about their particular areas and to discuss ways that infants and children are impacted in their communities and in their schools and in life by events beyond their control. We want you to leave today understanding 2 things. First, how prenatal care, childhood development, and a safe environment can impact a student's performance. And second, the impact of inadequate school resources to support the social and emotional development of students. Now, each panelist will introduce him or herself. You have the program and it has their bios, and all of you can read. So I'm not going to read it to you, and they're not going to repeat what's in their bios. They're here to talk to you about their experiences, the people that they've worked with, and how their experiences may possibly impact whether or not a child ends up in that picture. So if you would please turn your attention to our first panelist, Dr. Karen Breach Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I wish I had a good answer for that picture. I look at that picture and I think about a 3rd grader. It said that it is known that if a child can't read by 3rd grade, that's the picture. They have a much higher chance of ending up in prison. But why can't that child read? I will say that it's so much more than just prenatal care or just early childhood, preschool. It starts even before the baby is born. It starts even before conception. It starts an awful lot of the time with poverty. That is one of the greatest social determinants of health. Poverty impacts everything, and we know that Charlotte now ranks 50 out of 50 cities which a child born into poverty is unlikely to get out of poverty. And if this trend continues, then that trend will increase. And so why do I say poverty rather than a medical issue like prenatal care? Well, if one is born into poverty, they, mom, have less access to health care, they have less access to adequate nutrition, they have less access to their early childhood education, and probably even more importantly, they are more likely to be in a situation of high stress. High stress, we talk about getting stressed out, and we don't want to hurt our heart, and we don't want our blood pressure to go up. But in fact, stress impacts the size and the development of an infant's brain. And that's now what we call early, as the pediatricians are focusing on early brain development. We know that the child who is born with emotional detachment, you've probably all seen pictures in school with a little child who's in an orphanage, sitting alone, not interacting with anyone. Those children's brains are actually a little bit smaller and a little less developed because of the social detachment. So a mother who is in poverty, who can't get good nutrition because there are no good grocery stores in her neighborhood. There's lots of fast food, but no Whole Foods, no expensive grocery stores with fresh fruits and vegetables in her neighborhood, not getting adequate nutrition. Her prenatal care may be sketchy. She may get good prenatal care from the clinic, but she has to have access to the clinic. She has to have transportation to get to the clinic. She has to then be able to keep those doctor's appointments. They move, going on to the birth of the child. What is the environment that she's bringing the child home to? If things are very stressful at home, then the baby is not going to get the same kind of attachment, the same kind of emotional support. Then the child's got to go to preschool, and so on and so forth. And if they're not getting this from the very beginning, then this is the situation that we're trying to prevent. Keep in mind, mom and dad and whoever else, grandparents who are there, have to also have the emotional availability to do what the child does. We complain about parents, I know the teachers have been talking about the parents who don't come to the PTA meeting, who don't come to meet with the teacher. And teachers certainly can't do it all. But sometimes the parents just don't have either the emotional wherewithal to do what it takes to raise a child and keep a child in good health and to maximize their intellectual potential. Any questions? I'd love to take some, what you want to save all the questions for the end.
Hold your questions till the end, please, if you can, unless it's just a burning question. And if not, then Dr. Reach Washington, if you would pass that to Dr. Wanda Webb.
Good afternoon, and I would like to say to start, remember everything that Dr. Washington mentioned, because I'm going to piggyback on the information because what she's stressing is so powerful, and the way I'm going to discuss it is going to be an actual situation that I got involved in more than 20 years ago. But I will start with the notion, as you see in my bio, I was in education, I was involved in research related to violent and aggressive males. That was my area of expertise. Actually, males are easier to deal with than females. When females get to that level, it's a lot more complicated and a lot more dangerous. So I'd rather have have someone talk, yell at me in my face, then plot a scheme on me, as you females tend to do. But anyway, I want to start with an article that I talked to my students about at UNC Charlotte more than 20 years ago, and it was one of the educational research journals that came out just as we were seeing a proliferation of individuals using crack cocaine, and it indicated that children born of crack cocaine addicted parents were likely to move forward with disorders that were not already spelled out in the DSM or in medical journals. They weren't even quite sure what to expect. Some would have developmental issues, some would have learning disability, some would have behavioral issues, others would be a combination of all of those issues. But you couldn't predict in advance how this child was going to present. And I bring this up is because this happened more than 20 years ago, and yet we are still dealing with issues of crack cocaine, and therefore we are dealing with issues of multiple generations of children being born that have been impacted by crack cocaine. So, hold that in the parking lot, and we'll start with a day in the life of Wanda Webb more than 20 years ago. I've been a Head Start consultant from the time I got here 30 years ago. 10 years forward, I'm now at Head Start at 8 o'clock in the morning, sitting down with the parents of a 3-year-old who had some significant speech deficits, but we couldn't quite figure out what it was attached to. And so one of the things we always require is that we need to get a medical history. And so it took us a minute to get this history. And finally, we had this history. And so what we read in the history was that at the second visit, that healthy baby visit, it said that the mother was supposed to take the child to a specialist, to see an audiologist, and that they noticed and already picked up that there was significant damage or hearing loss in one ear and some hearing loss in the other. So here we have a mother who had this child while she was a teen, and when she became pregnant, she was thrown out of her home, so she was living with the baby daddy's family and had the child. After having the child, the baby daddy decided that he wanted to date other people. So she ended up leaving the household, and for a number of years while this child was an infant, she was living with other family members, relatives, friends, a number of years. But now she was 18 and a half years old, and she had a stable place to live. We had documentation. And as we were talking to her, we realized she heard what they were telling her, but she didn't know what audiologist meant. So she didn't act on it, never took the child to an audiologist. One, she didn't understand what that was. And number two, for a number of years, her life was she was moving from place to place. There was no stable place for her or this baby. So all of the elements that has already been discussed were germane in this child's development. So anyway, that session was about 45 minutes, so about 8:45, I'm now moving into another appointment, which was rather rare, because I was meeting with a parent that was a former Head Start parent, but now her child was in middle school, and she was concerned about some things that were happening, and she knew, continuing to work with them on their board, that I was still working with Head Start. Her problem was her husband had changed his job. He was out of town more often, driving a truck. It meant more money for the household, but now with this middle school son, Mom was having a little bit more difficulty managing and disciplining him, and his grades had suffered. So we came up with a plan, but one thing I've always shared, and I'm a mother of sons, and so it's very sensitive to my heart, that their boys to be boys, but it really does take a man to raise them to be a man. And so we came up with a plan so that Dad was more involved and son was aware of we had a plan for the son as well. We're almost through the session. It is almost 9 o'clock. Her cell phone rings. She gets on it. She says, "I'm almost done. I'll call you right back." But the person on the phone is screaming. And so I hear the screaming, and next thing I know, the woman drops to the floor. And I'll call this woman Mary, because you're going to need to know this person's name as I tell this whole next event. So Mary gets up and shares with me hysterically that her mother, whom I call Jane, reports that her sister's son, or Mary's nephew, accidentally shot his toddler niece at the house, and that we better come over right now. And the grandmother, or the 16-year-old Chris' mother, has gone to the hospital in the ambulance with the toddler. Okay, backing up, the mother, Sue, is 31 years old and is crack addicted. And she went in the ambulance with the toddler. The nephew, Chris, who was 16, was taken into police custody. And the baby's mama, Trish, was actually at the time, and she's 14 and a half. She's actually across town at the baby daddy's house and knows nothing about any of this that has taken place. So I'm with the aunt. We're going to make our way to her sister's house. I say drive slowly. I say we have to take a local road because Mary is hysterical and she's driving one of these SUVs, and so I'm sort of nervous getting on the highway. So we naturally arrive at the house, and the police are there, neighbors are already out there. The great-grandmother is there, whom I'm calling Jane, and she's the one who called in the first place to tell us what happened. She indicated that Mom, who was in the bed while the toddler was running around the room, and Mom was yelling to her son, Chris, "Why aren't you in school? I told you you were supposed to be in school. You're going to be in trouble because you're not in school." Now, Chris comes to the bedroom, but he has a gun in his hand that happened to be given to him by his sister's boyfriend, who's 18, who's across town, because the gun is hot. Now, Chris had nothing really to do with the gun, other than he's now the person who sort of hides the gun out. He comes around, and the gun accidentally goes off, shooting the toddler. Because of the circumstances of his mother, they had no telephone, and they had no electricity. So Chris picks up the baby, runs across the street to their neighbor's house, and calls the police from the neighbor's house. So when I arrive, as with the aunt, the neighbor is not really bringing me up to speed. Chris is gone. The grandmother, or Chris's mother, is gone. The toddler in the ambulance on their way to the hospital. And the great-grandmother is talking to me, saying, "I told this boy he didn't need to have this gun," and I'm thinking, and you didn't take the gun. But nevertheless, I then asked, well, does the sister, or does his sister Trish, know what has happened? I don't want her to see it on the 11 o'clock news, because that's what ended up happening. We're on the 11 o'clock news, and she ended up seeing it. But prior to that, the great-grandmother drove over because Trish didn't have a phone, and they didn't have a phone at the boyfriend's house either. Anyway, the great-grandmother goes over there, gets Trish, but by the time she gets over there, Trish and the boyfriend are running down West Boulevard getting to the bus stop because they did see it on the 11 o'clock a.m. news. And as well as I understand, I was on the news, at least my friend said, "I saw you, Dr. Webb, on the news." Well, anyway, the aunt and I are now on our way to Carolina Medical Center and understand that the baby had died and actually was dead at the point that Chris had picked her up and taken her across the street to the neighbor's house. When I get to the hospital, because the aunt and the grandmother, or Mary and Sue, the aunt is the one I originally been spoken to, well, they're hysterical now. They're hysterical, but the mother and the boy and the dad are there. I'm now having to go in with the minister who's doing last rites. I'm holding up this 18-year-old boy. Trish is, I believe, in shock, because she's just, she can't even move, not even a tear can come out, because we can't believe any of this has happened. So, the infant is given the last rites. We step out. The aunt sort of confronts me and says, Trish is pregnant right now. So I'm thinking, okay, she's 15 years old. See, at this point, I'm thinking on the 11 o'clock news, was I looking crazy? Because I guess I was sort of feeling crazy. But to make a long story short, the church stepped in to help me. DSS got involved. The police who had taken Chris away, he attempted suicide while he was in the holding cell, so he ended up in behavioral health. And the church assisted in getting electricity and a phone in that house. Moving forward, yes, Chris's mother said, oh yeah, I'm going to get into detox, I want to get treatment, but they had heard all of this before. But in the end, yes, Chris had to go to court. His sister did testify on his behalf, throwing herself on the mercy of the court, saying that it was an accident. She knew her brother loved his niece, and we all were aware from this situation that his life was forever changed. His mental health was forever changed. And he was put on probation. He was had to start back going to school regularly, getting therapy. And the police did indicate that the gun was indeed used in a robbery, but at that point it was too much information. I had to sort of stop. I said, okay, let the police handle this. We got to get through a funeral. So indeed, Chris did not go to prison, but he struggled with his mental health because of it. Trish did have another child, another little girl. But I want to say also at the time, because I'd already done research on this almost 10 years earlier, having been on an international panel on teen pregnancy. I'm sure you didn't realize that North Carolina was number 3 in the nation for teens having a child while they were a teen, and number 1 for a teen having a second child while they were still a teen. DSS, in a way to handle it, made a decision that they would contribute financially to that first baby, but if you had a second baby while you were still a teen, you weren't getting any funds from DSS. So, I guess in summary, because I held on and stayed in contact with this family for over 18 months, trying to see how things progressed. It was still shaky with the grandmother, or Chris's mother, in terms of her staying clean. But we saw the impact, or we see the impact of crack cocaine, as mentioned, minimal prenatal care, and that we see over and over situations where the life of that teen may be somewhat transient, even though we know that that was not good for the teen or for the infant. The impact of an early trauma like this in this family, yes, this was horrific. I have never ever confronted anything like this in my life, but in a split second like this, it went from, we have a plan for your middle school son, to a whole family being impacted by a bad decision of holding a gun. know the aunt's child and children, they did progress, but she had at some point distanced herself from her sister because it became at some point so overwhelming, no change in behavior, that she could not help anymore. So this is just a real life story. Thanks for listening.
Now we'll hear how the Department of Social Services gets involved.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you all. I see some people, some of my colleagues, some people that I've worked with over the years, people represented from all walks of life in our community. So it's good to have you here, and it's good to be here. I have a few talking points, and then I will pass the mic. But I grew up in an era where integration was first beginning in Columbia, South Carolina. And it was pretty hard for most of us in that era. My brother was the middle child. I had two siblings, and I was the oldest. And my brother was the middle child, and he had the most difficulty in school. He was in the 5th grade. This was the first time that a Caucasian teacher had taught a child of color, and he had a very difficult time. And I remember my parents having to be back and forth. I was very fortunate because my mother was an elementary school teacher, and my father was a lot. He was very active in my brother's life. And so that was kind of my first experience as a person and seeing how difficult at least it was for our African American males. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to get a job here after graduating from the University of South Carolina in criminal justice, getting a job here with pretrial release. And there I saw African American males coming in and out of the jails in astronomical numbers, and how they were treated and how they were perceived, and how they reacted and responded to that treatment. And so I didn't realize that all of this was shaping me for my career down the road. I was fortunate enough after that, I was still kind of in the criminal justice social work field, and I got a job with juvenile court as a court counselor. And this is before I got married to Steph, and before we had children. And so as a court counselor, Yvonne Evans was an attorney at that time, I think, and before she became a judge. And so she fought, for the children and children's rights. And so we were in court together, and I wound up with a caseload of African American males on probation. And these kids could go from anywhere, I think, from 7 to 17. And so, over 16 maybe, yeah. And so, I was very active. I spent a lot of my time, I was telling Reverend Howard Williams, I spent a lot of my time, unfortunately, in exclusion hearings, trying to advocate, and I know, Robert, you know about these, but trying to advocate for these adolescents to remain in school. And I had an unfortunate experience with one of my probationers. He died in a house fire because he was excluded. He was 15 years old and the only son of his mother. And so those experiences began to shape me. And then I was very blessed with my firstborn, who was an African American male. And so I was on it. I was in those schools, I was at the doctor's office, I was reading child development books because that's what I was doing as part of my profession. And so I was there every second. And then I started to see other African American males like my son. But they weren't as fortunate sometimes. And I saw them in the class, and I did what I could, being a full-time mom, working mom, to help some of them as well, alongside my son. I have a nephew who's around my son's age, and then I had friends who had boys all that same year. To say that became a passion of mine finally went to child welfare, where I stayed 20 years, and I saw the same things that Wanda and Dr. Breach were talking about as far as the types of mothers who came in and how they didn't always have a good understanding of what was going on. They didn't know what an audiologist was. They didn't have the transportation to even get to an audiologist. And then when they were talking about Dr. Breach, they probably didn't even understand what she was saying sometimes, even though she may have been saying it as simply as she could. And so as a social worker starting off, I tried everything I could to go to doctor appointments with them, to model how to talk to the doctors or how to talk to the school administrators or teachers, and try to do everything I could. And then as a supervisor, try to empower my social workers in doing that same kind of work. Right now, personally, I have a great nephew who is in another school system, and he's having a pretty hard time in the 7th grade. He just turned 13, and so I ask all of you who are believers and who believe in who Jesus Christ is your Lord to pray for boys like him and for him. Stanley and I have been very fortunate to be able to go to some of the school conferences and to show up, even though I'm still working full time, to advocate. But it takes a village, it really does. And even if you don't have anyone in your family, even if you don't have any grandchildren that have problems, there's somebody that you know in your community that you can relate to and reach out to. So I implore you to do that, because it takes all of us, the teachers, the doctors, the psychologists, the administrators, the social workers, everybody in the community, the aunties and uncles, everybody, to be able to do this. That's all I have for right now.
Mr. Alexander?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Up until 6.5 months ago, every child that died, I was notified in Mecklenburg County. I was notified immediately, no matter what time of night. The first thing I did when I arrived at work in the morning was to have my staff research to figure out, had we touched this child in some ways. Most people don't realize this, but most children, not only in Mecklenburg County, the state of North Carolina, but across the country, that actually die from murder or some unforeseen accident are under the age of 4. They are rarely reported to the media unless there are going to be some charges filed and it's very evident what exactly occurred. Part of the law is that when a child dies, the state comes in and they lead a team which is called the fatality review. And you look at system issues. And on this team, usually it will be either me or someone from my staff, from Youth and Family Services, a judge, medical professional, school personnel. And what we do is we dissect not only that child's life and look at systems that touch this child, but we also look at the parents. One consistent theme that I found was that it wasn't one system that touched this child, there were multiple systems that touched this child and also their parents and even their grandparents. It was such a wealth of information when you go back and look, and you have to ask yourself, what could we maybe individually, collectively, or as a system done different to possibly have saved this child's life? Let me just, for my former DSS colleagues, I'm going to share a secret. Every time a child, an adult, young man is arrested in Mecklenburg County for murder or some horrific crime, my staff immediately get to their office, and guess what they do? They look in their records to see, can we touch this particular child? And it's somewhat of a panic because you're asking yourself, what could I have done to have made a difference in this young man's life? majority of the time, and this is very sad to say, this child has been touched by the health department, the emergency room, the school system, of course, and I guarantee you he's been expelled multiple times. I argue with you that you look at even his parents' lives, and this is one of the sad things that I find, and that our community needs to reckon with. Unfortunately, let me just say this. I salute our single moms. They do a great job. But our dads or strong male role models are missing in these young men's lives. They're missing in their lives. And if the dad cannot be there, an uncle can be there, a grandfather can be there, a neighbor can be there. These young men need someone positive who they can model their lives after. And we have to be patient. And I know a lot of times we don't understand the language. Take time to learn the language. Listen. Be patient with them. Do not give up. And one of the, and I'm gonna end this, one of the things I find with a lot of, not young men, but a lot of kids that came through our system is that they had been rejected so many times. It's easier for me to go ahead on and get that out of the way. Let's just say, and this is specifically true with kids who are in foster care. They've been passed around from home to home. And when you've been rejected so many times, you shut down emotionally. So I don't even really want you to pretend that you care, so I'm going to do something so you can reject me so I can move to the next home. We need people who are going to stand for the long haul. I'm not saying it's easy. That's what our kids need. They need you. And we need to take a critical look at our young men. You know, like I said, when we go back and dissect a 3 or 4-year-old's life, short life, and I find that there have been about 4 or 5 systems that have touched this child's life and looked at their parents' life, and we try to correct the system so this fatality will not happen again. I wonder what can we do to look at these young men who enter the penal system. Can we look at their lives over a long period of time, and what can we do to make a difference? I would argue with you, there's a parallel even with that 3-year-old and that 8-year-old. Fortunately, the 8-year-old wasn't killed at an early age. Thank you.
All right, you've heard from the pediatrician, the child psychologist, and the social workers, and they have been addressing primarily the first thing that I want you to take away, which is how the child's early development is impacted by social issues around him or her. Now we're going to hear addressing our second issue from our 2 school personnel on how resources in our school system are needed to support the social and emotional development of the students. So we'll hear first from Mr. Anthony Calloway and then Mr. Eric Turner.
Thank you. It is wonderful to be up here sitting with this panel and looking out and seeing our community who's concerned about our children. I want to do something a little different. I want everybody to close their eyes for a moment, and I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to ask some of you to raise your hands and tell me what you think about it. Are you ready? Close your eyes. Pit bull. What image comes to mind? Go ahead and open your eyes. Pit bull. Come on, somebody raise your hand. Talk to me now. Yes, ma'am.
Fierce.
Vicious, fierce. Mm-hmm. What else? Aggressive. Anger. Drugs. Kind. A pit bull. Okay. Now, I just want to thank you for that. All right, because we just adopted a pit bull. We rescued a pit bull. All right. And I want to tell you about my experience adopting my pit bull. In order to adopt a dog, now I'm not a huge dog person. I like my dog, I don't like your dogs. Okay? I don't want to beat your dog. I don't want to play with your dog. I don't want to sniff me. When I come to your house, I don't want it jumping on me, right? But I have 3 boys, and we got a dog, and we end up rescuing a pit bull. And the reason I'm bringing this up, somebody's like, why is he up here talking about a dog? Because the pit bull has a reputation for being ferocious, for being vicious. What's the reputation for a black man? Okay, right? Now, like a pit bull, all little black babies, they come into this world, we're like, oh, he's so cute, oh my goodness, right? But then as they turn a certain age, then all of a sudden we become men. Wait, no, that's my son. He's 13. No, he's not grown. He's not a man. You are a child, little boy. You are my child, right? But all of a sudden, he's vicious and he's mean. So do you see the similarities between the pit and where I'm going? But to adopt this dog, people did an interview, a phone interview. They called me and talked to me. Then they came to my house to rescue a dog. They came to my house. They walked around my house. They asked me questions. How's it going to get his exercise? How many people live here? I was like, hey, listen, baby, we're not getting a dog. We're just like it. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just saying it was an experience to get this dog. Now, I'm going to tell you about my dog, Smoke. It's the most gentle thing. He's about 55 pounds. He thinks he's a lap dog, and he has been rescued, right? But one of the things that we have to do, well, one of the things that I saw, and I'm just like, these people are brilliant. So we rescued it from south of the bully, and it takes in bully breeds, which includes pigs. And so on their website, they talk about how loyal these dogs are. They talk about how gentle these dogs are. And they talk about how you have to care for it the right way so that it is a family dog. How many times are you going to socialize this dog? And so when I think of a pit bull, when I first think about it, I think of DMX, the big 2-inch chain collar, and like, you know, they're aggressive. But this dog, it could be a poodle. Because, I mean, it's so sweet, it sits on my lap. And my wife is looking at me like, oh, it sits in your lap, you better keep it off my furniture. But, I mean, it is a very sweet dog. And so when we talk about the narrative, because a lot of this has to do with narrative, right? So black males are dangerous. Black males are this, black males are, no, they're children. And they need to be loved. They need to be accepted. Okay? And they need to be socialized. Right? But we do all this for a dog. But we really don't care about how our children are being perceived. And I'm very sensitive. So when I watch the news, when I watch TV shows, and my wife hates it, because the first thing I'm looking at is, what are they saying about the black man? How is a black male perceived? Is he, oh, he doesn't take care of his children. Oh, he ran out. Oh, he's on drugs. And then they show the little black boy, pants hanging down, sagging, belligerent. And I'm just like, no, I'm not watching this. It's garbage. No matter how. Oh, it's critically acclaimed. This is a great show. No, it's garbage. Because I'm watching the narrative and I'm sensitive. One, because I have 3 awesome boys, but also I'm a black man. And so if we allow people to continue to put us in a light where our only option is that prison cell, that's where we're going to continue to go. So that is the first thing that I kind of wanted to bring up. Because in Pennsylvania, I did counseling, and we had wraparound services. And I was asking some questions about wraparound services because my school feeds the shelter feeds my school. And I'm like, listen, our kids are under chronic stress. And as the doctor said, their brains, this is not about black or white, this is about poverty thing. Because with poverty, it increases stress. I've been blessed that when I had my first child, I was college educated. I had a beautiful wife that was college educated, and we tried the working thing. And she said, I'm going back to work. And my wife had enough sense to say, baby, I can't do this. I said, you can't do what? She said, I can't go back to work and leave our baby being babysat by somebody else. Because the first teacher is the mother. And so she said, I'm staying home. And so I said, okay. I started school to get my principal's administration degree so I can become a principal because I knew I'd make more money. I took up the part-time counseling gig that I was doing and said, I need more hours. My wife's staying home. But because we were able to make that sacrifice, my kids had the best teachers. and that is her mother. And so I knew my boys were going to be all right because she had time to spend with our kids. And when you talk about socializing, my kids sat in their mother's lap and they were read to. So they knew what a book was. They knew how to read. They knew their alphabet. But if mom has to go to work, dad has to go to work, or he's out of the picture, whatever it is, who's spending time with your child? And I appreciate pre-K and all these early services, but nobody does it like the parent, because that is your child. And so the true issue that we're facing and really need to talk about is poverty and how it is affecting our community. Okay? And so I will continue with the school. I have some good news and bad news. What do you want first? The bad news? Okay, here you go. The school system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. I'll say it one more time. You can get upset if you want to. The school system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. When you go back to the committee of 10, when you go back to the origins of the school system in America, it wasn't for us. I believe at the time it was created, we were doing different jobs. Okay? So now we're integrated into a school system that wasn't made for everyone to go to college. College was for the captain of industries. Go back and read your history on the school system. And from the beginning of the school to where we are now, we haven't changed much. It's the same hours, same time, same everything. If you walk into my classroom, besides for the technology, you'll be like, oh, this is like when I went to school. They're trying to change some things, but it's a system. And that's something that I want to talk to you about. Our little black boys and girls are being reared in systems. And these systems weren't created by us, nor were they put there to be advantage to us. But with any system, if you learn how to work the system, you can get some good out of it. So I'm not saying give up on the school system. I'm saying, but you better learn how to work that system. Because a lot of the systems that are in place are pushing a certain narrative about people of color, about black people, especially our little black boys. There's so many conferences about teaching the black boy. Like we're some different species. Like we're some animal. You'll show love to your pit bull and you'll rescue all the pit bulls. Let's rescue some of these little black boys. Okay? But in order to rescue them from a system that is hurting us, we first have to learn about that system. And you need to learn how to work within that system to get what you want. And one of those secrets is, mom, dad, you get to know that principal. You get to know that teacher. Because when you have relationships, it's hard for me to put those stereotypes on your child because now we enter into a relationship. But if you're just number 1, 2, 3, 4 of 24 or 30 in the classroom, your child, we don't have a relationship. And so what I ask is that you get involved, but remember you're working in the system. And in many of these systems that we have in America, they culturally condition us to think that black is less. All right? And I'm going to try to get off my soapbox, but I can tell you one of the things that upsets me is my school is a failing school. And I struggle with that. Because I'm taking kids who come to me who don't know their name. Many of them hold books upside down because they haven't been read to, right? And that's not the kid's fault. But I take this child and we educate this child. This child is making growth and he's growing in leaps and bounds, but he's not getting to that point of proficiency that is on that test. And so if you look at the EBOS data from my school, it's blue. My teachers are making the kids grow, but they're not reaching proficiency. And so I have people walking around, I can't stand that school. That school is ghetto. That school's this. Have you walked in the building? Do you see what's going on? No. But we're going to take the letter that is given to us by the state, which really doesn't have a clue. Did I say that? Yes, you did. And I'll say it again, which really doesn't have a clue. And they're giving us grades. Why? So you can continue to think that, oh, I got to get my baby into South Charlotte. Take your child to South Charlotte if you want to. Because the care and the love that your child receives, and I'm talking about my school particularly right now, and my school is bar none. And you can come, you can walk with me, you can walk with my BMTs, and I'll let you see it. But we have to realize that we are dealing with systems. And so we have to change the narrative, first of all, and then we have to learn how to take care of the system. And the school is not meant to be a mental health facility. And so, yes, some schools need more resources, but we need to be able to control the resources that are given. So we can raise money and request more money for the school board, but I say you, the people that are in this room, have an idea of what we need to do, because the answers are here, right? So we need to ask for some of that seed money, some of those grants, where we can develop something for our kids. Because if our kids don't know who they are, well, let me change it. If our kids don't know whose they are, first of all right, we're in church. If our children don't know whose they are, and then they don't know who they are, they can be anybody's fool. I'm done preaching.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Turner, and just before I get started, I want to say I'm honored to be here. I grew up in this church, and I'm glad to be back. And so I have the privilege of serving as the proud principal of Sedgefield Middle School. And a lot of what Mr. Calloway talked about, I'm going to echo, but it's going to come from a different perspective. And so when you think about this prison, this school-to-prison pipeline, and where we are in Charlotte, this is very close to me, because not only did I go to school, I'm a member here, but I went to school at West Charlotte Senior High, and I'm a native Charlottean, and what I have seen happen in Charlotte over the last 40 years is interesting, I'll put it that way. But when you think about what we're facing with this pipeline, it's a combination of systemic and institutional issues. And we spoke about the systems and institutional issues, and what I deal with in the school every day, what's going to face me tomorrow morning when I get to work, are systemic and institutional issues. In addition to the family and individual issues that are often generational. So if we're going to be honest and have a family conversation, we have to be honest about some of the family issues that are not being addressed, that impact what's happening in the schools, but also what impacts those numbers that we saw earlier in our panel. So thinking about the systemic and institutional issues, one of the first major problems that I have seen is the resegregation of our schools in CMS. So when I graduated from West Charlotte in 1994, it was a much different place than it is now. And I had an opportunity to go to school with kids who lived in my neighborhood, but also lived in all other parts of Charlotte. And I was exposed to rich African Americans, rich whites, low-income African Americans, low-income whites, all of that. What I didn't get in my neighborhood, I got in school. When I think about what I see at West Charlotte, and before I served as principal at Sedgefield Middle School, I was the assistant principal at Bruns Academy, which is right down the street from Johnson C. Smith. And more often than not, most of the kids who live around West Charlotte, they go to West Charlotte, and that's all they are exposed to. If they're not lucky enough to be involved in activities with their churches or faith-based community or athletic events or whatnot, they're not exposed to anything else. So that 2-mile radius around West Charlotte, that's their work. And that's a systemic issue that the school district has not stepped up to address. And so with my school now, Sedgefield is in the middle of a restructuring and student reassignment, and it's just really a land grab with what's going on at that school. But if you really want West Charlotte to be what it was years ago in the late 80s and 90s, when it was a model of excellence, and not to knock the hard work that's going on at West Charlotte now, because there are excellent teachers at West Charlotte, they're phenomenal students, and we're going to hear from one. But it's difficult when you take some of the dynamics that were not there before, and then you try to compare 2018 West Charlotte with 1988 West Charlotte. It's apples to oranges. And so just to talk about some of the systemic issues, social capital and the networks that come from social capital are impacted when you come from a segregated school. And so the resources that I bring to the table, how do I take those resources to advocate for my child in the school? And if everybody in my school lives like me on my street, how are we going to learn anything different? So if I'm a parent, and my way that I know to get change is to go up to the school and cuss out the principal. And everybody on my street does the same thing. When am I going to learn something different? How am I going to be exposed to a different way? If everyone behaves the same way to affect change. And so when you think about social capital, how does the expanded social network outside the school, the barbershop, we know how much influence the barbershop has over African American men, the coaches in the community. I mean, if I had coaches that were as interested in my kids' grades as they are with them pulling out of school to go to AAU tournaments, we would have a phenomenal achievement with our African American males. So how can I get those coaches and those community leaders to invest in our kids in the school? That's social capital. And so you think about like that piece, but at the school level, we also have to make sure that we're providing a culturally relevant pedagogy. Is the pedagogy and the instruction that we're providing, does it speak to our kids and to their history and to their truth? Or are we perpetuating some of the lies that have been taught for centuries? And as an administrator, we have the freedom and flexibility, I use that term, to make sure that our kids are receiving a culturally relevant pedagogy. And last but not least, with the school-based systemic issue, is are we aware of unconscious biases that are taking place in our buildings? So Anthony talked about the pit bulls. And the way that looks in the school, like if an African-American male has marijuana, do I conference with that child, call his parents and send him to class? Or do I give him 5 days out of school suspension because he's just an African-American male? That's what they do. I don't want that to elevate my building. I'm going to pop up these 5 days, and that's done. And so how we handle our kids when we're faced with discipline issues is all based on the biases that we bring to our interaction with that person. And I gave an example of consequence and discipline, but it happens throughout the day. And so that's an example of systemic, but then let's take it back to what I would call some of the hard skills. I was speaking with Monroe Richardson, who's the executive director of Reed Charlotte, just the other day. And Monroe was talking about, we know that if a child cannot identify the 26 letters of the alphabet by the end of the first grade, if they can't connect sounds with those alphabets, or phonemic awareness with those letters, by the end of first grade, they're 7 times more likely to not pass the reading ELG in the 3rd grade. So we all know the data about the reading in the 3rd grade, right? That's what they approximate the number of beds in the county jail based on the kids who can't read by the end of the 3rd grade. But if we know that at kindergarten, by the end of kindergarten, then what Reed Charlotte is doing, they're looking at all of the parents whose kids, kindergartners, can do those things, and they're interviewing them. What did you do so that your child knows all the letters by the end? And they're not waiting on the schools. They're talking about the parents. And they're trying to develop a body of literature that can be used as a reference or resource tool for families and community leaders so that we can help support young parents or uneducated parents who just don't know any better. That's an example of what has to be done. So we're not waiting to the 3rd grade ELG and we see so many kids that aren't reading. So that's a hard skill. We're going to talk about the soft skills. You think about executive function, or you think about non-cognitive skills. And basically, those are like delayed gratification. Who's teaching kids how to delay gratification if we're this gimme, gimme, gimme society? And why is that important in school? Because if I tell a child, look, if you study hard and you work hard, you get a good education, you can go to school, you can get a good job. And that child looks me in the face and says, Mr. Turner, what am I going to eat tonight? It's cold in my house tonight. And so we have to talk about immediate needs versus delayed needs, and how do I convince a child that delayed gratification is the route to take? So I'm a principal, but I'm also in sales. I'm selling this dream, right? Every day, I'm about to have 600 kids come to my school tomorrow morning at 8:30, and I got to pitch them this dream. And if you work hard, you can be anything you can be. It's worked out for me and my family, thank God. But for many of the families that I serve, that dream has turned into a nightmare. And they didn't have good educational experiences. And the American dream is nothing more to them than a nightmare. So how do I convince our kids that what I'm selling every day is going to put food on their table, going to put clothes on their back, and going to also give them a matter of respect and dignity so that they can have status? Because if we're going to be honest with each other, that is important in our society. How are we going to do that? Because if we can convince them that school is going to do that, all the things that lead them to either the county jail, the federal penitentiary, or the state penitentiary, those things won't entice them. But we are able to do that. And I'll be remiss if I didn't talk about a broken family structure. So we talked about social capital, resegregation. We talked about the issues in the schools that we can do. But if we don't have higher standards for our family, then all this is always going to be talk. It's just going to be talk. We have to have standards for our family structure. We have to talk to our kids about sex at an early age. And I'm not just talking about the talk. We got to have the talk plus some more. I have a 14-year-old and a 19-year-old my 19-year-old is a freshman at A&T. And I pray to God every day. One day he went to A&T, he ain't go to Central, he made one mistake. But that's another story. But we gotta have more conversations, honest conversations about what it means to be a family. And my son, when all the expectations you have for your girlfriend, they seem to not be coming true, you don't bail, you dig in, and you make it happen. And that might be a hard pill to swallow, but how many men have, as soon as it got hard, they went on to something else? And we got little girls and boys all over the country who are victims of men who can't stay in there and hang in there. Yeah. And ladies, I'm not going to let you off the hook. Because you have to raise the standards. You run this country. Heck, you run the world. And we do what you allow us to do. I'm just going to tell you like it is. And if you lower your bar and you lower your standards, we're going to operate to your bar and to your standards. And so if you raise them, we're going to do the same. And so what that looks like, I've been working in and out of education for 20 years. And I can count on both my hands how many times I've had an educated man sit in conferences with me and talk about their child's education. 20 years. And sit in conferences either with me or our teachers and talk about what are we going to do to make sure my son meets the expectations that we have in the house that I'm leading. Like being a leader in his home. We have to get there, and we have to take nothing less. I've seen more parents get more excited at my athletic events. Y'all know this narrative. Then my PTO events, my PTA events, my teacher conferences. So I don't believe in that they got to work, and they got to do this, and they got to do that. Because they find a way to get to the basketball games. Find a way to get to the football game. But find a way to get to the conference. Find a way to get to the discipline decisions where somebody's sitting and trying to make a decision whether your child comes back or your child is going to alternative school for 35 days, which is going to accelerate that school to prison pipeline. So we got to. So there are a couple of pieces I'm going to shut my mouth. So we talk about this cradle to career and wraparound services. We can talk about school to prison pipeline, but we have to talk about what are the cradle to career wraparound services that we're going to provide to kids. And when I say cradle, that's well before they come to school. So how are we going to educate those mothers? Jeffrey Kennedy did this in New York with the Harlem Children's Zone. How do we begin to provide those services to those parents as soon as they find out they're pregnant? And I said they, not just the woman, the father also. Secondly, 13% of my sixth graders came to me in year 16 and 17 on grade level in reading. I just want you to let that sink in. 13% came to me on grade level in reading in the year 16 and 17. And we worked hard as we could to get them to grow. So we talk about the difference between growth and proficiency. But we have to understand that if you're not reading on grade level by sixth grade, just how far behind the curve you really are. And yeah, I can get an F on my school report card, but that F is 1 day, 1 test, 1 day out of 180 days. And so there's a more comprehensive assessment of what goes on in a school other than a report card. And if we really want to be honest, the whole school report card is about real estate. And then it's about real estate. And it's about identifying values to schools in certain areas to impact and affect real estate. And we can have that conversation on another day. Last but not least, this is an economic issue. This narrative, black people don't kill black people. Poor people kill poor people. Black people don't rob people. Overwhelmingly, poor people rob people. So we want to stop this black on black crime or all of that. It's an economic issue. You think about if we broke it down and look at everybody that was murdered last year, we hear records with our murder rate in Charlotte. How many of those people who committed murders were low-income offenders? And how many of those victims were low-income victims? It's a poverty issue. And we all know what impacts poverty more than anything else is education. And so if we want to impact that, we got to deal with the education issue and the economic issue as well.
Last but not least, we have a young woman who is a student. So she can talk to us about some of her experiences in coming through the school system. Chandra?
It's
Did I
Chandra.
say that right? It's Chandra Frazier.
Good afternoon. As a student from West Charlotte, I can see there are different students that walk around, and you can tell whether they need help or if they're just going through something. And I mean, there's too many kids at the school that's being suspended, and that's just one period. And it's for reasons that you won't understand why. Like they might disrupt the classroom, and then they might get sent to ISS. And if you don't attend ISS, then you're gonna have OSS. And I just feel as though the students, I mean, they can go to ISS, but they're missing class time. So what's the point? So if they go to class, the teacher, they're going to call the BMTs, they're going to put them in the classroom, and that's going to give them more time in ISS. And that doesn't make sense to me. The counselors at the school, what are the counselors? They don't really help us. I mean, some of the counselors at the school, they help, but it's not really much they can do because the principal or the other administrator that's over them, they have them doing other jobs that doesn't really make them seem as though they're a counselor. And me being a senior, I know my counselor, they're supposed to help me get scholarships I can go to college and tell me with my career paths. And I know I already know what I want to do, but if I didn't know what I wanted to do, the counselor, they wouldn't be able to help me with that. Going on the nurses at the school, we only have one nurse, and she's only there for 2 days out of the week. And if she wanted to call out, she could because she's a teacher there. And what if somebody is going through something and they might be a female student, they might be pregnant, and she needs to go see the nurse because she doesn't know what to do. She doesn't want to tell her parents, because she's scared. And then going with that, she can't go to her counselor because she doesn't know if she can trust the counselor because she might call her parent or something like that. And then it's crazy. And I don't know, I just feel like the school system, it's not really set up to help the kids as much as they should. And it's too much for a child to grab and to grasp hold of.